Meet Joe. Joe's 32 years old and a murderer. 13 years ago, I met Joe on the Lifer wing at Wormwood Scrubs High Security Prison. I'd like you to imagine this place. It looks and feels like it sounds. Wormwood Scrubs. It is where England's most dangerous inmates are kept. These people committed acts of unspeakable evil, and I was there to study their brains. Now, growing up, I used to think of morality as something that I'd learned from my parents, from school, perhaps even from religion. But after my year on the Lifer wing, and after spending the subsequent decade studying morality in the brain, I've come to a rather different view that I'd like to share with you. Instead of the elusive concept of evil, consider empathy, that immensely powerful ability we all have to understand each other, for me to enter into your inner world and feel what you feel. What if what we call evil is in fact an absence of empathy? And what if that could be studied at the level of the brain? So we tested our population of inmates on their ability to make moral judgments, and we tested their ability to recognize moral emotions. And what we found was truly astonishing. They were able to make moral judgments, but they failed to understand the emotions required for empathy. They weren't really willfully evil. It was more like they had a blind spot for morality. Our population of inmates had a deficit in a circuit of brain structures which included the amygdala, an almond-shaped organ deep within the brains of all social animals. But what was most astonishing was that this brain region was capable of adaptability and change. It could generate what's called neurogenesis, new generation of neurons, way into adulthood. What that means is that rather than being something purely learned, morality is something that resides deep within us, part of our shared humanity. And when it falters, it can have devastating consequences, but it can also be overcome and compensated for, like we all overcome the visual blind spot that we have. That requires specific training and practice. One way forward may be through restorative justice programs that train young offenders in the skills required for empathy. Such programs target the amygdala and may be more effective than the old practice of isolation and incarceration. We need a revolution in our understanding of the causes of crime. We need a new science of empathy. Thank you.
In this webcast lecture, I want to talk about the moral and ethical system of Immanuel Kant, outlined in his book, The Fundamentals of the Metaphysic of Morals, published in 1785, but really continued throughout all his works in the latter part of the 18th century. The headline is that Kant teaches that all of us have within us an innate sense of right and wrong. He calls it the moral law within, and we're always aware of this law at all times, regardless of circumstances. Any person may do an immoral act of some sort, such as telling a lie, and they might well get away with it, and they might calculate they're bound to get away with it. But even in those circumstances, Kant says they will know they have done the wrong thing. Immediately, there's a very important practical point here for journalists. No philosopher, certainly not Kant, would think that any of us as journalists or just as ordinary people could ever say they knew the truth about any matter. But Kant is asserting we always know when we're being honest or not.
My background is as a private sector first strategy consultant and then as an industrial individual, so Shell and then McKinsey for both about 5 to 6 years. and I work in this space now because it really helps my clients think about how they make decisions differently. It's exciting, it really challenges the way they innovate, and as a result I just think it's a great tool for education, particularly in the social sector space, which is what brought me to working on it with Armani.
So, over a decade of working in social entrepreneurship, I almost never saw us looking to nature for solutions or for answers. And it just struck me that if we were trying to rethink how education needs to happen, how do we better prepare change makers, then trying to find 21st century ways or in fact even ancient ways that we've lost touch with seems to be a good place to start. We designed bioempathy as the starting place of this program, partly as a way to help people kind of step into a new reality, peel back the layers of the self and come into the program with an open mind, but also because we genuinely think that there are answers to social innovation or to social challenges that nature can provide a direction or a clue towards finding.
I look back at all of that time and I think in a lot of the consulting work we never used nature as a source of inspiration or innovation. There was no reflection on could biomimicry help us? Are there species which are doing this in a way that would be truly insightful for us to learn from?
So at the Immanual Institute Bioempathy course, what we do is look at two elements of what we call bioempathy. The first is seeing nature as a mentor, so, along the lines of biomimicry and what the Biomimicry Institute puts forward as the 6 principles of life.
It's really looking to nature as a guide, as a teacher, as a source of what can we emulate, what can we mimic, how can we copy its perfection at doing so many things which are exactly the direction we'd like to take it as a species.
The second is nature as mirror, reconnecting with nature in order to understand better the way nature operates and then use that as a source of inspiration for coming up with new ideas. So the two are intimately linked and we have to do both at the same time in order to see nature as a way to come up with solutions for the problems that we face.
In order to do that, we need to reconnect as individuals back to really our own souls and being part of nature. Because to emulate, you need to be quiet and you need to be able to listen. And listening is at the core of what we do in terms of our reconnection work, which has a lot of different influences from Taoism to Native American practices to just working with an individual's own beliefs and religious systems. But what's wonderful about nature is it tends to work for everyone.